Let's do this.
Well, welcome back. The Julian Show. Honored to have been invited back.
Look, I mean, after the first time you saying, it's the Julian Show, and me going, no, it's not. Clearly it is, because I am the most important person out of the duo. So, yeah, absolutely. Yes, welcome to my show. Welcome to my show. I believe 30 people watched it last time. Thank you very much, you 30. No,
I think 3 of those were me.
That's me repeatedly trying to do editing and stuff. So I have no idea if the sound is working on this. So if it's not, it's just going to be through that camera, which might be a bit poor. And if it's through these, it should be fine and dandy. Although it is, I'm really quite unprofessional.
It's your charm.
I know. Well, let's just see what happens.
Go for it.
Right, so good afternoon.
Where are we?
Where are we? We're at Silverstone.
We're at Silverstone.
We're at Silverstone. We're not at the circuit itself. We are at.
We're at Silverstone.
We're at Silverstone. We're at Woodcote and Copse.
We came down to see what they're doing here. They're selling Morgans and along with some other things. And so we thought we'd come down and see their operation and have a little look around and see if we could ingratiate ourselves with them as they begin to plan some fun, exciting things for their Morgan customers for the future. See if we can get invited along for those as well.
Yeah, free stuff.
Free stuff.
Yeah, that's got to be done.
So it's been a good day. They've got a nice operation here, some really nice cars and some nice seats. And they've set us up. So
I have to say,
it's very man cave.
It is very man cave.
Yeah.
So depending on which brand you buy from Woodcote and Copse, I suppose it would depend on how you'd feel about this, because they generally do Lotus, Caterham, Morgan and
Subaru,
which is just really a bit weird.
Well, it fits if you think about it for a long time. They've all got wheels. They've all got wheels.
They all do have wheels.
Seats.
Yes. And apparently colour.
Colour.
I heard someone mention.
We were getting out of, I don't know what it's called, some electric.
Hang on, so you got the Electra,
sedan.
you got the Emira, the Electra, and this is the.
Sure, whatever. The sedan. And one of the guys was like, so what do you think? Did you like it? And I was like, no, I don't.
It's a saloon car for people from the UK, a sedan.
I don't at all. And he was kind of offended. He's like, but it's sleek. I'm like, yeah, it's 7 feet wide. It's 20 feet long. It looks like it weighs 8 tons. I don't know that it's sleek. And he's like, oh, no. I was like, what do you like about it? And he paused for a second and then went, the color?
Oh, he didn't say it like that. No, he didn't. He's making, look.
It was.
I thought it was a really nice bit of irony by the salesman. Look,
in fairness,
it drives me insane actually. So James and I were talking the other day on the podcast, and he slagged Harry from Harry's Garage off for the fact that he says, "Oh, he always says the same thing." There's a reason why Harry always says the same thing. It's because cars are just the same. Yeah. And if that salesman had turned around and said, "Oh, we have this, and this," you know, it would just be Lotus's version of the same as everything else. So him to turn around and say, like, the colour with that sort of irony, I think it was quite a good answer, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, the car did have a colour.
It did have a colour, and it does highlight the fact that cars today are just...
I don't.
Beige?
I think everything about that car was beige. Anyways, we're not here to talk about electric Lotuses.
No, because they're beige.
So what we thought we'd do today, I came down from the Dales and Julian's come up from wherever he comes up from, and we thought we would talk about the Supersport because both of us have been obviously involved in seeing the kind of the launch and some early previews of it. We've been following along in some of the forums, for better or in my case worse. Seeing kind of various people's responses. And so we thought it might be kind of interesting for us to have a sit down and a conversation about our journey with the Supersport and where we're at with it now, and just share some of our observations and reflections on the car and where we think it fits within Morgan and where we think it fits as owners and now buyers of this new one. And share some of those kind of thoughts for your consumption, critique, criticism, I think at this point you're supposed to say like and subscribe. Click that little bell notification.
Oh God, shit. Yeah,
And,
sorry. Yeah, if it's Instagram, follow, and
then
if it's
comment.
YouTube, like, subscribe.
We're pretty pathetic. So we like genuinely.
Really?
I'm pretty pathetic. I won't speak for you. He's pretty pathetic. But we really enjoy when there are comments.
There's mini racing on the TV. Do excuse me if I end up.
We do enjoy your guys' comments and thoughts, and it's interesting to see what you guys have to say. And I'll be honest, when Julian releases something, I do hit refresh a bunch through the day to kind of see what people have said, and always enjoy that. So do feel free to add your own thoughts in.
Wade
at
in.
the bottom. Should we launch right in then? Because this is I say launch right in after like a 15-minute preamble.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I say, half of this probably won't make the cutting room floor.
You say that, but I know how you edit it. It's all going to be there.
Yeah. Just throw everything in.
Okay.
It's meant to be
Journey to Supersport. How did we get here? So I thought the first thing we could kind of chat about was we were both invited for the first preview of the car. I think it was the first preview of the car in kind of mid-December.
I think you need to take a step back. I think we probably just need to frame a little bit where we're coming from before we start to arrive.
I think people kind of know. If they're watching this, they probably know. But both of us have a bit of a relationship with the company. Julian's had a 4 and a 6. I had a 4. We both share reasonably prolifically on Instagram, and Julian on YouTube. And have, because of that, developed a little bit of a relationship with Morgan. Which has been a real treat. It feels like a real privilege to kind of get to meet those people. They're wonderful people, and get to see what they're up to, and just get to be part of the kind of family in a way. And so we did know that the Supersport was kind of coming. We'd heard kind of through the grapevine something's coming to replace the 6 along with everyone else. We had maybe a little bit more of an indication of some of the direction that was going, and then we're invited to this preview. To see it for the first time in December.
Before you jump ahead, I want to say, look, if you haven't seen this before, Spencer's working on the principle that people know who we are, and yet the 4 and the 6 is a good indication of that. But I think for you guys watching this, obviously you can see that Spencer's younger than I am, for example, and you can see that I'm not necessarily a traditional Morgan owner because I still don't have to use a stick to walk around. That's the generalisation. But if you're listening to this, you wouldn't necessarily get that. And I think also that sort of like...
You were finding it a lot easier to get into the Lotus today than I was.
But that's probably because you're 6'6" and I'm 5'8.5". That's the difference between getting into an Exige. I don't think it's necessarily age. And in theory, I would find it
felt like I was doing my best Clarkson, getting in and out of that thing.
Yeah, that's right. So, anyway, we're going to start going on to the stuff he posts on social media. So that's where we are. So we're Morgan owners, slightly different age demographic, both of us quite passionate about the cars we already existed, and then this rumour mill starts about, the rumour mill doesn't start, the 6 is ending. If the 6 is ending, then means that there has to be a replacement. There can't be no flagship for Morgan. And that's roughly where we got to.
So I think that's kind of where we were at. We knew that something was coming, and I think we had kind of, as many people will have had, ideas about where Morgan should go, where we thought they could go, where they might go. And then showed up in December to this initial preview, which was really interesting, I felt. It began with John Wells, the lead designer, a really great guy, really articulate guy as well. And as he introduced the car, I had thought it would be a little bit like the Midsummer preview that I went to. It was a really long description about the design history and about the materiality and about all of the things that they were drawing on as they were kind of putting this together, and that was before the reveal. And it made sense because the Midsummer, in a way, needs quite a lot of explanation. And one of the things that struck me in this preview when we saw the Midsummer the Supersport for the first time, it was before it had a name. I don't think they'd even kind of quite named it at that point.
Project 26.
Yeah. He said that the car predated the Midsummer, and that the Midsummer had come out of the development of this car. And then he talked about the engineering, and they showed a little video of the crash test of the car from underneath. And then he kind of handed it over to Matt Hole, the new managing director, who is an engineer through and through, absolutely fantastic. In my view, the person you would want running a car company if you care about cars and driving. And he talked again more about the engineering, and there was actually really little discussion about the design of the car. And then they pulled the cover back. It was a pretty brief kind of 10-minute introduction. They pulled the cover back, and we had our kind of first impression, our first view of the Supersport. And we had slightly different impressions on first viewing.
Yeah. I'm trying to work out the timeline. You saw it before me.
Oh, maybe I saw it.
You saw it on your own first.
Okay.
I then saw it on my own for the first time, and then we both saw it in January. Is that how it worked?
Maybe that was it. Yeah.
I think that's how it worked.
I think that is right.
Okay, so when I first got the invite over to go and see the Supersport, Dan, who everybody knows, I big up Dan, sort of said to me, you've only just got your +6, sure you're not that interested. Clearly doesn't know me well enough. I would have wanted to see it even if I wasn't going to buy it.
Although I think they really were trying to pick potential customers.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, not it makes any difference one way or another, but he obviously, I had a chat with Dan, and Dan invited me up, but it was before I'd seen Dan. Obviously, you'd been true to your NDA and not mentioned anything to anyone whatsoever.
There may have been some broad reflections on the fact that I really liked it. So my first viewing of the car, I saw it and people went right in. I kind of wandered around the side of the room for kind of 10 minutes and just kind of took it in. It looks like a Morgan, obviously. There are things that are different about it. Obviously, the boot's a bit different, the wings are a bit different, the front's a little bit more. There's kind of some kind of Bauhaus brutalist elements to some of the slab-sidedness of it, and I think, one of the things that I've reflected on is when you first see something and you're familiar with the type of that thing, any change from the norm is jarring. When you're used to the shape of a thing and you see something that's a little bit like the thing and a little bit different, it can be jarring. My first impression of the car wasn't jarring, but I didn't feel immediately like, I know I'm going to have one of those. I thought, well, it's got great stance. It looks really solid. The undersills on the side really kind of plant it. It looked really solid, and it looked like a serious piece of car. But I wasn't sure that I necessarily loved it. And it took me about 15 minutes moving around the car. And then the thing that kind of clicked was as I got close and started to see all the little details, all the little decisions that they'd made, really proactive decisions, design decisions and engineering decisions, various touch points, various places around the car where it's clear they put a lot of time and effort and thought into what they wanted it to be like and not just inherited bits that had been there before. And then when I took those micro thoughts and micro observations back and looked at the whole thing again, I felt like it kind of settled into my view. And by the end of that kind of 45 minutes, hour viewing, I said, yeah, no, I'd really like to be getting one of these.
45 minutes?
Yeah.
You think that's how long?
Well, I mean, I by the end of that, I was there. I would say I was getting excited about it after about 20 minutes. And on first viewing, I thought, yeah, impressive, cool, people are going to love that. It's going to do really well for them. I'm not sure it's for me. I'm not sure if I love it. And then there was the detail. And then when I came back out with that detail and saw the whole thing again, I really felt like it came together.
Do you remember what you said to me?
Go on, I'm not sure I do.
You just covering your back for the NDA?
I think I said, well, no. I think what I said, because I also got a gentle kind of reminder from Morgan about my NDA.
That was later in the year. That was more end of January. That was after.
No, I think it was pretty early. It was because after the first.
It was after I'd seen the car.
After the first viewing, one of the dealers sent out an email to their customers saying, we've seen the new car. It has a boot. We've sat in it. And that was
before we went to see it together.
Yeah, and yeah. I had commented, and there was a bunch of criticism in some comments on a forum about it, and I was feeling a little bit defensive because I really liked it, and I said, it's great, I've seen it, it's fantastic, it looks like what it is, it looks like a sports car, it's going to be a sports car, it looks like it'll compete with Vantages and with 911s, and if you pulled up alongside a Vantage or a 911 in this, the other owners wouldn't look at you and think, I wonder why he got that instead of.
Yes.
I don't think I commented any more than that on specifics, but in terms of like general feeling about the car.
I just look, Spencer has a very different memory to what he posted versus what I did. So, so I now remember the timeline of this. So Spencer got invited to go and see the Supersport and very much said what you said now to me. You said, unlike the +6 and the +4, you wouldn't have to explain when it was built. for example.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to say, well, it's not a classic car. Actually, this is a performance car, or no, it's on the new CX platform, or anything like that, because it fundamentally looks modern with classic cues. Is essentially how you described it to me, which I was so excited about. I was so excited about that when you said that.
I had bigged it up for you.
Yeah, so you had really set this up, and of course, from my point of view, when I bought my Morgan Plus 4, see, interestingly, there's a short reel out at the moment on Instagram by Morgan Motor Company, and Matt Hull, managing director on it, turns around and says, we're heading in a direction, Morgan's heading in a direction, with this car, and I posted it. I shared and posted it and put, I'm going the same way. This is Andy. Oh, I'm going to come with you. But I think I was waiting at the bus stop before Morgan were, because it wasn't when the CX platform cars came out, and it was Henry Catchpole did the review of the Plus 6 and then the Plus 4. Certainly for me, I went, oh, it handles. This car is now not only does it look like a classic car, which I like, I like classic cars, it handles really well. And what you were telling me at this point was I was going to have my cake and eat it, because all of a sudden it handled really well, is what you were telling me.
That's what they were telling us.
That's what they were telling us. Well, I think the Plus 6 with nitrons handles really well, so I'm feeling quite confident about where it's going anyway. But the fact that you said that the looks, it no longer looked like a classic car, but it absolutely looked like a Morgan. And I love that idea. For me, it's almost, I see that as like a Juliet toaster, like a Smeg freezer.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. Not quite the classic it was when it first came out, because it doesn't have to quite be like that. But enough of the hints, but with all of this technology behind, a true modern classic.
But,
however,
you came and saw it.
I came and saw it, and exactly the same thing. So quite a short spiel. I didn't go to the Midsummer spiel, so I didn't hear that, and I missed the Super 3 launch, which I was due to be at because I was stuck in traffic.
If it makes you feel better, I wasn't invited.
To the Super 3 launch? Were you not? Oh.
I don't think they read that one wrong.
Yeah. So I missed to meet my hero. I didn't get to meet Johnny Smith, who I really wanted to meet. Still want to meet, but I've got another project on with the electric classic cars, and he's friends with them, so hopefully I can wheel in Johnny. So I'd never been to a launch, didn't know what to expect, and this of course was a soft launch just for customers. And Matt did a lot of the talking about the engineering and everything else. And when he was talking about it, all I could think when he talked about the CXV part of the platform, I knew it didn't matter what he showed me, because I was never going to know what that felt like until I was driving the car, and I still don't know what it's going to be like, which I find really quite exciting.
Yeah.
Because if they're saying it's better than it was, it's going to be better than it was.
So much of what they have said, and this came out during the launch as well, when you've got your lead designer talking about the drive of the car.
Not the look of it.
And so much of the kind of the impetus for the development of the car seems to have been on the driving side. Both of us, I think, are really excited.
And that, for me,
to get
that's
behind
it.
the wheel.
I can't wait to drive it. I can't wait to own it, to drive it as much as anything else.
But I want to hear about your initial, because I want them to hear about your initial impressions when the cover came off.
So when the covers came off, so obviously not the main launch. This is at the soft launch. I was stood right in front of the car, because there wasn't that many of us. There can't have been more than 30 people at this little soft launch, and I was stood with Dan and I think it was a guy called, it wasn't Steve, it was somebody else. So another couple, we were stood and waiting, and the covers came off, and I stood back, pinned against the wall. I just wanted to take it in, just get an impression. I didn't want to rush forward. I needed to get a feeling of what this car was like, and it was unfortunate because it sat on a plinth which is about yay high, and that's it. almost doubles the height of the car almost, because the car's so low and so small. It was immediately there was a slight change in terms of the dynamic of what I was looking at, because it wasn't low. And I didn't immediately go, oh my God, I want that. And I was sitting there, I was looking at +4 headlights, no spots, quite like a spotlight myself. I thought the grille, what did you refer to it as earlier? What did Morgan people refer to it as?
Like a waterfall grill or something. I don't know, the like bars
Yeah,
that
yeah.
come down. Yeah, the little prison cell.
I don't know what whatever they described it as. I liked that. I thought it was quite punchy. The front end initially was quite in your face. And as you know, my +6, I spec'd it to try and make it more muscular and have a bit more of a stance, but still be quite grown up.
Yeah.
And what I was looking at was quite a grown-up car immediately from that. There was no disputing it. It was spec'd in a colour, so it's in that silvery pink colour. Lilac? It's not lilac. What was it? Is it called lilac?
I think it's lilac.
Is it called lilac? It doesn't look lilac. Most of the time it looks silver. But it carried it so well. It carried the colour without changing the dynamic of how I felt about the car. I didn't immediately think it's a bit flaky or flimsy because of the lighter colours, which I often think about +4s. Sometimes I look at them and go, oh, it's made it insipid. It has no strength. It has no presence. It's just a pretty little classic car. Whereas I could look at this and go, well, any colour you like.
I think strength and presence are both really good words for it.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the things that's inarguable. Whatever you make of the design, whatever you guys make of the design, and we know there's a lot of polarized positions out there on it, that it's strong and kind of confident and powerful is evident.
Yeah.
You can critique the front, you can critique the back, you can critique the roof, but it's certainly strong and confident.
It's certainly there.
Yeah. Which I think you talked about the kind of the 4 and the 6, and I think that was always one of my feelings. Both very pretty, but it always felt like they were just kind of floating there. They were lightly on the ground, not in a sort of like that's a lightweight sports car, but the body itself to me always looked really thin.
Yeah, see, I hadn't thought that until you said it to me, and then immediately I went, oh yeah, look, because on the +6,
you can see just how thin the panels are.
because you've got these beautiful louvres that are really thin,
Yeah.
And actually, like you say, it's the side of the car.
It just hangs. It's like a sheet,
like a
draped
skirt
over. Yeah, and it's just hanging there, which is pretty.
It is pretty,
but it's not confident.
No, it's not. Which is why I think the colours have to work so hard on a traditional looking Morgan.
Yeah.
And that, yeah. So there was I looking at this car, and bearing in mind I didn't take in all the stuff that I'm going to rant about shortly about what made it work for me. But at that point, standing back and immediately I noticed things that I'd noticed on the mid-summer. So the arches being flattened off slightly, I noticed that. I noticed that the arches weren't quite so dipped. It didn't look as floaty in its design. Not necessarily in its presence on its own chassis and on the ground, but just within its design, it looked just a little bit more like it meant to be there. I always look at the hard top more than the soft top because
that's you.
Meh. Yeah. One way or another for hard tops, for soft tops, I'm not that bothered. So looking at the hard top, we quite liked the structure of it. I quite liked the curve. Wasn't too sure about how far that curve dropped down the rear of the boot. I liked the shape of the boot and I liked the shape of the car generally. I wasn't bowled over by it. I didn't find myself going, I want it.
We chatted when I was driving back home and you were back home. We had a kind of debrief, and you were not overwhelmed.
No, so
and I think it's a helpful thing for people to hear, because I think a lot of people who've seen it have felt similarly.
Yeah,
their first impression, they're like, yeah, that I see it. That's it. I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure about that.
At what point did you decide that actually you felt that it was right for you to get into?
Well, I mean, that's a bit of a... I mean, I've got that in our notes for later, but we can kind of do that now. So I'm coming from the 4. My 4 is being sold now.
Yeah.
And my build should start any
Okay,
day.
so not so much the order then. When rather than
Why, though?
Yeah, a bit more of...
And so for me, I think, and I've not shared this too broadly, but for me, it was... When I got the 4, I thought I would just be using it to potter around in the Dales. That would be its kind of primary use. Are we okay?
I'm just checking it's working.
I loved driving it so much that I was taking it out a lot further afield and using it a lot more than I'd initially thought I would.
Yeah.
My wife was a little bit uncomfortable because I'd gone with the one without airbags. I'd gone with a 2022, which I was excited about at the time. I kind of wanted the Modolito wheel, which you really liked as well.
Yeah, beautiful.
I wanted the traditional dash. I thought if you're going to do a traditional car, then get the traditional car. And I kind of wanted to get in before they did the airbags in 2023. And it was fantastic. But she kind of got under my skin with that and got a little bit in my head on like, hey, you've got kids. You know, you're taking this further afield, you know, maybe you should get something with airbags. My parents were on the same page. And so the kind of decision had been made, okay, I probably need to get something with airbags, but I just couldn't bring myself to upgrade from the 22 to the 23 or the 24 plus 4 when I felt like my plus 4 was so good. My spec was so good, the design was so good, and it just seemed really unnecessary to kind of make the leap. But I knew that I'd probably have to make the jump at some point. And I had a plus 6 for a couple weeks up in the Dales, and I liked it. We've chatted about that. But it wasn't, again, enough to make me think, oh, I need to go from my car to the plus 6. So for me, it was partly the confidence of the car, the crash testing as an opening. I mean, I know they didn't target that at me, but like being able to go home and tell my wife, oh yeah, the first thing they showed us was a crash test.
Yeah, it is, and it's safe.
And it's great. So there was that. And then my relationship with the company had developed as well. I've just really come to appreciate how they make things, how they design things, the team who do the designing and do the making, the whole ethos of the company, the way they treat their employees. I'm definitely a convert, and I want them to do well. And I think when they do well, it's good for the community. It's good for their employees. I think they're a good company in that kind of ethical, altruistic sense. They are good, and I want to support them. I'm keen to be able to support them with a new car. Keen to get a new car that my wife would be more comfortable with me in. But then it was the confidence of it that when I saw it, I was like, this is a sports car. It's not a classic car that you can drive sportily. This is a sports car. And it had that kind of robust, assertive confidence that made it look like, yeah, what you would be spending on this. Sure, you could get other things, but it's not going to look out of place beside those other things in a way that the 4 and the 6 might have in the past, or at least engendered more questions. And so I thought it was a really confident statement. And I could sense the pride of the team as well. And I like a story, I like a narrative. I could tell that they were proud. I liked that they weren't describing the car when they were doing the reveal, that they didn't need to. This is the car, you can see it. We could add words to this, but what will words add that you can just visually see for yourself? We could explain all of this, but you can also just look at it. There's a part of me that almost wishes in some of these early previews when John is got the press there, when they pull the car off, that they say, well, tell me about the car. And I kind of wish he would just turn around and say to them, you tell me about it.
Yeah, tell me what you think.
You see it. It's here. You tell me about it.
Yeah, I don't need to tell you about the design cues. You're experiencing them right now.
And no, I mean, for some people that's been polarizing. I think overwhelmingly the stuff that I've read, people are very positive about it. Maybe the traditional Morgan owners aren't quite so sure. But people who like cars, like automotive design, who are maybe not entrenched in the Morgan camp already, they're looking at it from what I've read and seen online, and they're saying, well, this looks like a car.
Yeah.
Now you add to it that it's, 1,170 kilograms, that it's got a 335 horsepower engine, that it's, it's light, it's fast, it's fun, and it's 2025. And for a lot of people, they're looking at that and they're saying, yeah, that's a winning recipe. I'm just really glad that the company, anyone is making a car like that.
This is one of the things that bothers me, and it's also one of the reasons why I found it quite difficult to make the decision between the Plus 6 and then the Supersport, is that this all went before. I mean, all of the things you've said already exist about the Plus 6.
Which is lighter, which has the same engine.
And that's it. So, I mean, there's not a massive weight difference between the two. A body, essentially, putting somebody in your passenger seat, perhaps, or not even that much, I don't think. But when you look at the Plus 6, and this is the argument I have all the time with friends, car owners, drivers, people I know who drive, and they're telling me, why did you waste your money on a Morgan? Why did you get a Morgan? You could have had, and they'll quote the usual, your usual stuff that you can buy for around about 130,000, which of course second hand. I mean, I can I can have a Ferrari. I mean, I can have a 458 if I want to around that money. That those
a little bit more change, and you've got a Roma. And yeah,
if I bought a Roma, I would have a bit more depreciation. If I bought a Roma, I'd be foolish to buy a Roma. So I'm listening to all those things and what's not to like, and think, well, we had all of those things, and I watch multiple people doing reviews on cars where they go, oh, why have we got this digital screen? We've got all this interference with all this digital stuff and everything else. Much preferred when we had the buttons. Well, my Morgan never actually got to the point of having one of those stupid screens. Whether it's because they couldn't afford the technology update or anything, or any of those things, I don't really care. All I know is that when I get in my car, the only digital screen I have is very small. It tells me the speed, it tells me my MPG, and if I press the button enough times, it'll tell me my oil
So what
levels.
I hear you saying then is there's really, Morgan was already making the Supersport with the Plus 6.
Yes.
It was a slightly different design.
Yes.
And they were talking slightly less about its driving characteristics.
Because I'm hoping it has slightly less.
So those are the things that we're then saying, okay, yeah, the 4 to the 6, it makes sense that there's going to be, or the 4 to the Supersport makes sense there's going to be a difference.
Yeah.
But the 6 to the Supersport.
Initially,
we're going to find out. We're going to find out.
Well, yeah, but even just from a looks point, initially, I'm stood there going, I don't know, I'm not too sure how much more it's going to give me, how much more it's going, in terms of how it's going to make me feel. Because my cars, or the cars that I buy, have to have an emotional kick with coming on with them. There has to be a characteristic to the car that I find that I'm in tune with in some way. And my 6 just...
It's a fantastic car.
And I'm not sure if it's just the Morgan-ness of the car. Again, one of those things which is almost impossible to define, or what. But my 6 really fills me with an emotion, with a positive emotion.
What kind of emotion?
Funny enough, joy. Funny enough.
Interesting.
Joy.
Yeah.
Driving joy.
Driving joy.
Driving joy. Yeah. The emotion of motion. Oh no, yeah, driving joy. Driving joy sounds better. So I found it really difficult in the 24 hours where I pondered whether to get it or not, whether I was going to go down that route. I suppose I ended up going for the Supersport as much as anything else to go along with the journey and the story and everything else. I wanted to be part of that. I'd made a decision I wanted to be part of that when I bought the Plus 4, that I wanted to see this through. But it was the second time that I saw the car.
Yeah, where are you at now with it?
I was gagging for the official launch, not because of this or the embargo or anything else. I wanted to see the car for that third time.
I can't get enough of it. I can't wait the next time I get to go back down to the factory and see it again.
Yeah.
I really like it. And I think it's one of those things, as it does settle into our peripheral vision, people start to see it more as the driving reviews come out, just as it kind of enters into kind of our visual frame of reference a little bit more. I think it's going to really settle for people, as it has for us.
Yeah.
I really, really like it. It looks great.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that made me feel more and more drawn to it versus a more traditional S4 or a 6. Let's face it, that's where we're going with this. Where you talked about the lightness and the flimsiness almost of the bodywork of the Plus 4 and the 6, is that with the Supersport, it actually looks like someone has bolted the body onto it, as opposed to, like you say, draped over the top. Mm-hmm. Because with the 4 and the 6, it is very much like someone has draped something over. And if you drove too fast, it would blow away almost.
I mean, not that I ever went this fast, but when you were one to go fast, what I imagine they would feel is the lift from the air on the wings. It would possibly start to feel like you actually had wings, and that you were in the process of taking flight, or that you might just rip the body right off the chassis.
All right, well, so I've done, I think the fastest, when I was looking down.
On a track.
136 miles an hour at Goodwood. So I can't remember what that straight's called. So the back straight before you get into the Goodyear curve turn, just before the chicane. Anyway, the straight bit at Goodwood. And I can tell you now that it didn't feel floaty. It had the propensity, I'm sure, at a higher speed to be floaty. But yeah, no, it just felt great. I mean, it really does feel great. And that's why I'm so excited about the next car, because...
In fairness, you're talking with the hardtop as well. And were I to imagine pushing my car, it would have been before the hardtop. So...
Yeah,
slightly different experience.
Yeah, when I went from in the Plus 4, I had the hard top on the Plus 4 as well. So I had the LM62, the homage to the Le Mans car. And when you took that lid off and I put the soft top on, there was something quite special about that car being a soft top.
Yeah.
I think if I was going to own a Plus 4 in my fleet, I would spec that as being the soft top.
You wouldn't have a choice anymore. So
no, okay. Unless it goes up.
Let's come back to.
But anyway, so this is yeah. So the solidity of the new car was what I really liked about it. I quite like the idea of, and if anyone has not looked at the Supersport properly, that the grille in black, with having that solid black section underneath, no matter whether you have the bright pack or the dull pack.
You mean along the side? Yeah.
Well, you've got across the front to the bottom, and then all the way down the sides,
and then around the back,
and then wrapping around the back. You've got this block of black that actually looks really purposeful. It looks like it's been made from something solid.
Now, if you want an example of the alternative, you can look at any photo from the side of the Plus 4 or the Plus 6. You can go on my Instagram and you can see photos. When you're shot from low down on the side, as a photographer, I notice this all the time.
Sorry.
Bless you. And
hold it in. Oh, my heart.
When you take a photo from low down on the side, there's because I wondered about this when I saw the sill for the first time. I said, is the car going to be lower? And it is a little bit, but it's not because of that sill. And if you look at the 4 or the 6, what you'll see is the wing, the aluminum on the wing comes down, aluminium on the wing, comes down along
I can
the side.
translate later.
And then below that, if you're shot from very low or looking from very low, you can see under the chassis, and you can see the CX platform under there. And you can tell that the wing itself is floating on the side of the car. And what they've done with those new sills, front and back as well, is they've just encased the entire surround of the car. And so it's now, it visually sits solidly on this platform, integrated into this platform, which is and again, maybe you pick this up in the photos. Maybe if you go to the factory, you'll see this, and eventually you see them on the road. But in the flesh, it makes such a difference for how the car sits and looks and then feels and what it communicates to you in terms of its intentionality and its purpose.
And that's it. This is the whole point of me saying about it being solid. It's the purposefulness of it. It's oh goodness, what can I compare it to? I'm trying to just...
I think just a sports car, like a solid modern sports car. Now, it obviously has incredible design cues and it's doing its own thing and it's decidedly Morgan.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like a concession. It doesn't look like a concession. And I think there was an element to my 4 which I love. And the 4 is pretty, and the 6 is pretty, but they don't convey confidence.
No, they convey Morgan, old Morgan.
And there's something wonderful about that.
Morgan
has an amazing
history.
It's
not wrong.
The old Morgans are beautiful cars. And I think, and again, we're talking about the Supersport, but it's important we're not talking about it to the exclusion of the other cars that Morgan is currently making. If you want a pretty classic looking Morgan, the Plus 4 is that.
And
the
it's
Plus 4
beautiful.
is, we know from the Evo reviews, we know from having driven them and owned them, they are fantastic cars.
Yeah.
And so if you want louvers and you want a traditional design and you want that beautiful bodywork that's draped over this chassis but still drives like a sports car, you've got that.
Yeah.
You don't need to dislike the Supersport because it isn't that.
No.
You've got that in the Plus 4. And again, it's 2025. You can go out and buy that car new, and it will be pretty and traditional and Morgan and all those wonderful things that you want with louvers and all of that. But to differentiate, instead of having the 4 and 6 doing the exact same thing, but with slightly different engines, you now have the 4 and the Supersport,
Yeah.
which is a different design statement, conveying a different sense of confidence, a different purpose for possibly a different client, or at least extending the clientele. And from a corporate perspective, I can see the benefit of distinguishing your cars in your lineup like that.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, that completely, the lineup now completely works. But come on to that in a second, because I need to do a really big sniff, and I'm going to have to cut that out.
Okay, we're sniffed, we're sneezed, and we're back.
Yeah. Okay. Look, I mean, the lineup for Morgan is I'm pretty certain I've said it already. I think their positioning is now they've got their positioning right, and I don't know whether.
And if you want an example of that, go on their website. I think one of the coolest things you can, like, you go to any manufacturer's website and look at their list of cars. Go to the Morgan website and click on the configurator, and you'll get a screen with. Oh, you can tell I spend way too much time here. You've got a screen with 3 panels.
Yeah.
You've got a Super 3. You've got a Plus 4, and you've got a Supersport. There is a company in 2025, and you can buy new any of those cars.
Yep.
You can spec them as you would like.
Yep.
You have weird adventuring 3-wheeling.
Yep.
You have traditional, beautiful, old-fashioned, historic design back to 1950.
Quintessentially English.
English. And then you've got all of those cues that you had from the 4, all of those cues from all those old Morgans, but just tweaked and dialed and modernized in a way that sort of speaks to the future and looks to the future and makes a statement about driving into the future.
Yeah.
And maybe you look at the Supersport and you're like, yeah, I don't like the back. I don't like the front. I don't like that it doesn't have louvers. Well, look at the panel right beside it. You've got the tradition. You've still got it.
Yeah, because the difference in performance is slight. Real world, probably not even there.
Yeah. As we found.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
They're both great cars. They're both great, fast,
absolutely.
fun driving cars.
Whether you got 4 cylinders or whether you got the 6, you're going to have a car. Yeah, I mean, you can't knock it. I mean, you've only got 1,000 kilograms.
Yeah.
Below you.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it. If there's enough of you and your mates around, you could pick your car up and take it somewhere if you wanted to. That's how light it is. Yeah. I like that. I like the idea of that positioning. I don't know whether they found it on purpose or whether because knowing Morgan as I know them now, I think there's a certain amount of stumbling into discovery. I think that's changing now.
Well, let's change that into organic discovery.
Okay, organic.
I think that there was intentionality there. I think they knew that the 4 sold well. The 6 was not selling the way that they wanted it to. This is just my guess. That they needed to push the top end and they needed to differentiate.
Yeah.
And I think they knew that. Now, why you end up, this is the next question we can come to really organically, why do you end up with a Supersport and not with a new Aero or a new thing that you call the Plus 6? Why do you end up with something that they haven't done before in a car, the Supersport? Yes, they've had,
iterations of it, haven't they?
But this is the Supersport, not an Aero. And one of the things that I think, we saw this at the launch, before we went into the kind of the factory floor where they were launching, they had in the reception room, they had the first Aero that was at the Geneva Motor Show, and they had an Aero Max.
Yeah.
And there was definitely a statement they were making there. And I thought initially that the statement they were making was, this is the successor to the Aero. And one of the critiques that I've read online from people is, well, it's not an Aero.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be an Aero.
Yeah,
I've had a few comments like that.
I think that may have been a slight error on the company's part to kind of position it that way. because it isn't an aero. If you wanted an aero, then you would have windows that went up and down. You would have a more solid structure. You would have there are other design cues from the boot of the aero that you would want that are great.
The thing that I don't understand is that I never when I went to go and have it unveiled with you the first, on my own, and then with you we went back in January, didn't we? On both occasions, they had a range of different Morgans in that
there was no
pre-room.
aero discussion.
Yeah, it wasn't hinted that it might be like that, although there was to hint at that at the main launch, because we had two beautiful aeros there. But I think we had one aero there because the smallest cog had done some work on it. So Richard Hammond's...
Sure, but it was the launch car at Geneva for the start of the aero, which was the start of a new design statement.
But look, if someone turned around to me and said, we've got the launch car from whatever it would have been, I would have turned around and said, well, put the other launch car in there. This just makes a story,
but when
regardless.
you add the Aero Max to that, I think you're starting to make a statement.
Yeah, okay. But only for the, 100-odd people that were there for the launch?
Yeah, who care about these things?
Because nobody else was there.
No.
So nobody else would have got that visual cue. Yet I've still got people saying to me, I was expecting more of an Aero Max. I wasn't expecting an Aero, because the Aero was such a limited...
It was just a production car.
Was it just production?
The Aero Max was limited, but the Aero itself wasn't.
Okay, because the Aero Max second edition, they only made 60 of them.
100, 100 of those, I think, of the Aero Max.
Yeah.
Anyways,
but
here's the thing. I've thought a lot about this, and I think it can help to kind of go backwards from what the Supersport is, where they came to it. And I think when you look at where Morgan's at now, a lot of people are like, well, give me a V8, a naturally aspirated V8 and a manual transmission, and put it in an aero body, and give me windows, and then we'll have something that I would replace my Aero 8 with. Okay, why not make it a W16? Like, why not make it a hydrogen car? Like, if we're picking the things that we want to go inside, like, fine. There are necessary limitations and constraints. And I think one of the things that's evident is that for cost, for supply, or provision reasons, homologation reasons, Morgan has, in terms of a large displacement engine, they've got the B58, the BMW B58. They've got 335 horsepower. They're evidently not able to, from homologation or from BMW, to tune it more. I suspect they would have wanted to if they were allowed to, given that this is a new car.
That's why Litchfield exists.
Same output as the Plus 6. They've got a B58 335 horsepower engine, and that's what they're working from. Now, if you start from there, and that's the beginning of your design brief, well, where can you go with that if you're going to have a car that's still going to compete with the Plus 6? That's going to be not the new Plus 6, maybe not, certainly not, I think, as we'll find, end up at being an Aero, but a new range-topping car. And what it has to be is it has to be at least as fast as the Plus 6. It needs to be at least as dynamic as the Plus 6, but you can't increase power, which means you can't massively increase weight, which means from a design perspective, there are aero elements that you cannot implement. You can't do the big boot. You can't do the heavy windows.
No, but I don't think you'd want to anyway.
I'm trying to kind of, I think, like, provide a little bit of perspective on why I think they got to where they got to. Why not call it the new Aero? Well, because it's not those things.
No, exactly.
If they were to do a new Aero, it would have different cues. I suspect Supersport was not an early decision in terms of nomenclature. I get the impression that this car was designed with driving in mind. It was designed with the kind of the engineering and the designers ping-ponging ideas back and forth based on weight, based on power, power being inalterable. They couldn't change that. They ping-ponged back and forth, and they landed with something that they liked, that looked Morgan, that looked fun. It had windows that could come out, that could go in a boot. They'd added to it, and they were like, this is a really cool thing that we've cooked up. What is it?
Yeah.
It's not an Aero. It's not a new Plus 6. Well, let's try Supersport. And does that convey something? And now when you look at it, and our early impressions before we knew what it was called, we knew it was Project 26, and we saw it, does Supersport fit? And I think, yeah, that looks super sporty. That looks solid.
I quite like the idea of it just being called Project 26. I like that.
But I can see where they got to with it, and I think, limitations aren't necessarily a bad thing. They're also, in some respects, they're just inalterable. There were fundamental limitations.
Never mind the limitations and the actual design process, the actual designing of it. going back to people's perceptions, they thought it was going to be more like an aero. That's partly what I was hoping for, because what was it? When did the aero come out? Late 90s?
I think early thousands.
Early 2000s. All I do...
The late 1900s. How does it make you feel when you... The late 1900s.
Yeah. Well, it's the late two... Yeah.
No, it came out in the 2000s, but regardless, when you start to say the 1990s as the late 1900s, it really starts to date us.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyways.
dates me.
I was born in the late 1900s.
You're just but a child. I had children.
You were born in the mid 1900s.
I had children my first child was 1992. When you look at when you looked at it, but when I saw the aero being launched, it was a massive departure from where Morgan were. The biggest criticism anybody had of it at the time was its quirky inward-facing lights. And of course, the biggest motoring magazine of the time was on television, which was Top Gear with Jeremy Clarkson, Richard Hammond and James May.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, they're on something else now. We watched that avidly. I mean, it was the thing to watch. The internet wasn't as big as it is now. There's a huge number of things have happened since that weren't there at the same depth at that time. And I remember thinking how amazing that was, and the fact it was such a departure for Morgan. It was so modern and so forward-thinking. I can understand why people are looking and going, oh, I thought they were going to do an aero. Yet they have done an aero. It is forward-thinking. It is looking forwards. It hasn't necessarily moved them into the future, but it is forward-thinking. And the reason why I think it's forward-thinking is, one, it sits within a range of cars. It feels like it's been designed to top a range of different propositions within a brand. I don't necessarily think it tops the range. I think it is a car within a range, because although it might be the most powerful, it's not necessarily the first choice for people. I think if you were looking at Porsche...
That's a really interesting point. I think that's a really good one. Yeah.
If you were looking at Porsche, your first choice is going to be the 911. Yeah. You're always going to want to have the 911.
Maybe you'll land on a 718 until you can get into it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or you might not, you'll be guided. Yeah. But with a Morgan, you could choose any one of those cars.
That's right. That's interesting.
It'd be fit for purpose and right for purpose. And it would be your range topper. So I do feel like it's an aero. It has a really good, strong proposition within where it fits. And then you come on to the benefits of the actual car itself in comparison with its predecessor. Yeah. And its predecessor being the Plus 6 is not a million miles away different from it, yet its attitude and its positioning and what it does for the company is absolutely
radically different,
poles apart.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then the closer you get, and this is again something that we've benefited from in our now multiple viewings and speccing the car and all of that, the closer you get to it, the more you see those differences.
Yeah.
Those tactile points. There's some of you you'll encounter this when you come and see it. Maybe in some of the reviews, photos, you'll see it. But just behind your shoulder, above where the door closes, the door has got a lovely new closing mechanism, which is really solid. But just when the door closes, on the little sill right by your shoulder, there's a piece of rubber that they've designed that is would have been so welcome in any Morgan I've driven in the past. And it's just a really nice little bit of sealing, really carefully done, really intentionally done. And actually, it was one of those components when I first thought, I thought, they didn't need to do that, but they've done that because they looked at it and they thought, not just we could do something here, but we should do something here. Mm-hmm. What should it be? And then they didn't pick something off the shelf. They designed something for that space, and it just worked. And I think as you move around the car to a bunch of the different points that they've shifted, it's not a new Plus 6. It's its own thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's an impressive thing.
Yeah, I don't think anyone will. I don't think anyone would choose the Supersport over their Plus 6 if they like their Plus 6, because the Plus 6 is what it is. I mean,
it depends why you got the Plus 6. I think if someone wanted, the powerful traditional Morgan and went out and they had the choice between the 4 and the choice between the 6, and maybe they'd had an 8 or something before. Yeah, you get the 6.
Yeah.
If that's you, you're going to look at the Supersport and you're going to say, nah, that's not for me. I can't wait for ours to get built. I can't wait to drive mine.
I know, because you keep sending me different specifications.
Yeah, I need to get a hobby. I need to finish writing my book. I think that. Well, I don't know. You guys, we've chatted about it for a while. You guys can comment in the comments what you think about all of this. Okay.
I think the most, just to wrap it up, the most interesting thing, guys, is that you've noticed that neither of us have talked about the actual bits. We've not talked about the boot. We've not talked about all those little bits and the side panel. We've not talked about all the things that they talk about, from Morgan talk about as a benefit. We've just talked about how it makes us feel. Yeah. And I think that's why you should buy a car.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever going to be, well, it will be for some people, the bits.
We bought 4s and 6s and didn't have boots. The boot wasn't a selling feature for us.
No.
The boot on the new one, I'm super excited about it. I love the idea of being able to go somewhere with the side screens on, decide mid-drive to take them off, being able to pop them in the boot, then decide later to put them back on. Or, you and the missus are going away for a weekend, you put your bags in the boot and on the back parcel shelf, you get to where you're going, you're out in the lakes or wherever it is, in the Alps, wherever you've gone to, and your bags are in the hotel and you're out for the day and you decide, it's a perfect day, let's get the sides off, let's put them in the boot, you've got the space to do that.
Yeah.
And you can make those decisions on the fly. I think that's fantastic. I think that in terms of the use of the car, that's going to be a much bigger point than any of the early observations, press stuff, or even from the designers, their commentary on it. I think that as a feature that gets used, the relationship between those side panels and the boot is going to really transform the way that the car gets used. Going to be used vastly more often with the sides off. Excited about that. I think the boot is beautiful as well. I mean, the mechanism.
I haven't seen it open.
The mechanism for it is just fantastic. I was down in London and managed to get a sneaky little look at the car when it was being shown to the press in London in February, and I was there with Matt Hole, the managing director, and for about 45 minutes. It was just the two of us just chatting. And we were sitting in the car and got some music playing on the speakers, which were great. He's an audiophile and really invested in the sound and the kind of theatrical kind of, it sounds like you're in a live venue with the new speakers. But he spent about 10 minutes talking to me about how they'd worked on the strut for the boot. And he was just so invested and so focused and knew every detail, and they'd thought about, the speed at which it opens and the sound and the feel and all of the iterations they'd gone through, just because they wanted to get it right.
Did they tune the air compression noise?
That was kind of the thing that he was, it was all of that, and genuinely for 10 minutes with deep passion, he talked to me about this boot strut, and I thought,
You thought, fucking engineers.
No. I thought, if that is the care that the managing director of this company has put into that element, and he loves driving, how good is this car going to be to drive? And then as I went around and looked at all those other little components where it seemed like, as much, if he could spend 10 minutes telling me about the boot strut, how many hours was he going to spend telling me about the bonnet releases?
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, I like that. I think that's awesome. And I think that came out, if we're talking about the initial reveal and the launch, the passion and the pride that Morgan have in this car is evident.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. There was the twinkle in Matt's eye when he was talking about stuff to me that I liked the most, because it was not, we've just got a car and you're a customer, I'm going to sell it to you. It was much more, look at what we've done, look at what we've done. There was an excitement rather than just a matter of pride.
And they can't wait for us to drive it.
Yeah, I know. It was interesting. Also at the main launch, with everything that was going on, Jonathan wandered over to me and just went, "Hi, Julian." He came and stood next to me, and we just sort of watching everybody taking it all in, to see what people felt. So it was no longer. It wasn't like they was just standing there to go, "This is our new car. I hope this all goes very well." It was more. Just, "I'd like to show you my new baby."
Yeah.
Isn't it beautiful? It's going to do great things. And that's what it felt like.
It doesn't feel like they're trying to show it off.
No.
There's an understated element to
So
it.
you are going to love it because you won't be able to help yourself.
Yeah, that's kind of how it feels. And again, it's one of those funny things. Here we are sitting and talking so much about the design when the thing they want to talk about is the drive.
Yeah.
And none of us have driven it yet.
No.
And so obviously that's something that we're looking forward to. But yeah, I think that they're not out there right now trying to convince us. And I don't think they need to. And I know we feel, maybe you don't. I feel a little bit defensive. I kind of want to convince people. I do get a little bit evangelistic about it, and I want people to understand where I'm coming from and see it the way I see it, and that's just how I am. I like to kind of bring people along with me. I like to I like to have the argument. I like to have the discussion. I want to create a sort of
a drama around it. Yeah,
agreement. I just want to bring people along.
This is amazing. And when they say no, it's not, and you go, no, yes, it is. Yes, it is. You know,
no. The issue is you don't understand. One of the things I need to be better about is
someone needs to teach you.
Some people don't like things.
Yeah, you're
that's
definitely
fine.
you're
ignorant. If you look at it and you're like, yeah, that's not for me. I need to get better about being like, no, it is for you.
Yeah.
No, I don't. Yeah, that's fine. And that's okay because they're going to make $200 a year.
I don't need to have one. Yeah, don't have one. I keep saying to my friends. I mean, I'm lucky in I'm lucky in the friends that I've got and what they drive. It doesn't really make a lot of difference. But my friends drive real good performance cars. And some of them have a number of cars and they use them for different things, anything from track days to holidays. And although they don't necessarily understand why I've chosen a Morgan, they know that I'm discerning enough not to have bought a pile of shite. They know that much. And when I say to them, you've got to drive it, you've got to experience the drive to know what you feel about it. And I've only had one of my friends do that, and that was on track. And and he, like I, felt the suspension needed work, which has now got nitrons on it on my Plus 6, which means it now had the work that it needed to be great on track and on the road. I don't feel the need to persuade them all. I do feel the need to remind them that I'm not stupid. After that, I feel like the guy back in the 1980s who bought the Volvo. I think I may have used this analogy with you before. Bought a Volvo T5, for example. When Volvo went touring car racing and stuck monster engines in there, and Polestar got involved with their specification, you could buy yourself a Volvo that would rip the arse off of any other car on the road, and it would still be in a state. I feel like I'm that guy. I'm in the club where nobody knows. Nobody quite knows how incredibly good this car is. One day people will recognise it, whether it's now or in the future. But in
the meantime, we'll be enjoying them.
And in the meantime, I'm doing that. Oh, and also I posted that on LinkedIn once. I'd just seen some lovely posts from Morgan, very beautiful place, very what looked to be affluent people of a certain class were around the car. I want to say it like that. I don't want to be too presupposing, but that was a general impression. And what I posted on there was these people can swoon around at these places and look at these cars and jump in and out them and get their photographs taken. But I own one of those cars. I get to do that every day.
You get to hammer up to the Dales.
I get to drive that. Oh yeah, I get to drive for 5 hours, and when I arrive, still feel great and still be in the car that I want to be in.
Yeah.
And feel.
I have never been for a drive in. I never went for a drive in my Plus 4 that I got out of at the end and thought, I wish I'd done that in something else.
No, exactly. I've got into other cars and thought, I wish I'd brought my Morgan.
Yeah. I'm now being bereft of a Morgan and waiting for the new one. Every time I get in any of my cars, I feel exactly that. I wish I was in my Morgan.
Yeah.
Starting build pretty soon. I think mine should be ready in May. I think yours is probably ready in May.
About the same? Yeah.
And then we'll hopefully get together with them and do a little video of the two cars, which are very different.
Yeah.
But all super sports.
Yeah,
but
so
very different.
So coming soon to the channel.
That's right. Yeah.
Coming soon to the channel. Right. Okay. So coming soon to the channel, we're going to have we'll have your car being launched. If you want someone to come and video you're enjoying that, then obviously there'll be your launch, there'll be my launch. Yeah. I'm going to do a video of my spec, so I'm going to be meeting with Dan and showing you what it's like to spec a car up over at Morgan. If you
Special
go to
experience.
Morgan. And obviously the obligatory factory tour, because I'll be there and have a wander around. And also, I'm very excited to say that both Matt and Jonathan have agreed for me to interview them. I have
Brave men.
I have no idea what we're going to talk
Brave
about
men.
yet. They don't know what they're going to be talking about yet because it probably won't be
Not
cars.
too late to reconsider, guys.
There's that. So please join us, like, subscribe. You can find me on YouTube. You've obviously got this. There's Instagram as well.
You don't need to find me anywhere.
Yeah,
Don't worry about it.
Spence doesn't care, but yeah, if you're driving philosophy for Spencer, Julian _ the views wherever you get anything you get on social media. Spence, thanks, mate. Good to see you.
Always a good time.
Yeah, we'll do the next one.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Now it's recording.
Whoa, that was a recording, wasn't it?
Yeah. I just scared you, sorry.
Don't do that. You're such a kid. I told you you were a kid.